I never thought I would die because of an HOA, but standing outside my cabin at 2 in the morning with the temperature at -18 degrees, I started to believe it was possible. My name is Sebastian Andrews, and I had owned my mountain cabin in Breckenridge, Colorado, for 3 years before the Pine Ridge Community Association decided they had dominion over my life. The cabin was my sanctuary, a place I escaped to every other weekend from my consulting job in Denver. It was a modest 2-bedroom place with a stone fireplace, surrounded by pine trees and located at the end of a winding gravel road. When I bought it, there was no HOA. The previous owner, an elderly man named Frank, had told me the area was unincorporated and free from such bureaucratic nightmares. Then Frank died, and his nephew sold the surrounding land to a development company. Within 18 months, luxury homes sprouted up like expensive mushrooms, each one costing north of $2 million. My cabin, worth maybe $300,000 on a good day, suddenly looked like an eyesore to the new wealthy residents. They formed the Pine Ridge Community Association faster than I could blink, elected a president named Brenda Morrison, and immediately began sending me violation notices. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday in October. It informed me that my cabin was not in compliance with community standards. The wood siding needed to be replaced with stone or stucco. The gravel driveway should be paved. My 20-year-old truck was considered an eyesore and could not be parked in view of the street. I called the number listed and reached Brenda herself. "Mr. Andrews, this is simply about maintaining property values," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Everyone else has agreed to these standards." "I never agreed to join your HOA," I replied. "My property predates your development. Actually, if you check your deed, you will find that your property is indeed part of the Pine Ridge community boundaries. The previous owner was grandfathered in under old regulations, but upon sale, the property automatically falls under our jurisdiction." I hung up and called my real estate attorney, Marcus Chen. He reviewed my paperwork and delivered bad news. Through some legal maneuvering I still did not fully understand, the development company had managed to incorporate my parcel into their HOA boundaries. Marcus said I could fight it, but it would cost tens of thousands in legal fees with no guarantee of success. He advised me to either comply with their demands or sell the property. I loved that cabin. It was where I had scattered my father's ashes, where I had written my first novel, still unpublished but deeply personal, where I had proposed to my ex-fiancée before she decided she wanted someone with more ambition and less attachment to old buildings. So I ignored the letters. They kept coming, each one more aggressive than the last. By December, I owed $17,000 in fines. I still ignored them. Then came the notice that they had placed a lien on my property. Marcus called me, concerned. I told him I would handle it, though I had no idea how. That brings me to the night of January 16th, when I drove up to my cabin after a particularly brutal week at work. My supervisor had announced layoffs were coming. My mother had called to tell me she needed surgery. My truck was making a grinding noise that probably meant expensive repairs. All I wanted was to sit by my fireplace with a whiskey and forget about the world for 48 hours. I arrived at 11 p.m. The temperature was already -5 and dropping fast. A winter storm was moving in, and the weather service had issued warnings about life-threatening cold. I grabbed my duffel bag from the truck and walked to my front door. The lock had been changed. I stood there for a moment, key in hand, trying to process what I was seeing. A new deadbolt had been installed, shiny and brass, completely different from my old lock. I tried my key anyway. Nothing. I tried the back door, Also changed, rage flooded through me, hot and immediate. I pulled out my phone and called Brenda Morrison. It rang 5 times before going to voicemail. "This is Sebastian Andrews. You changed the locks on my cabin. I am standing outside in Subzero temperatures. If I do not get inside in the next 10 minutes, I am calling the police." I tried the windows next. All locked. I could have broken one, but something stopped me. Some instinct that this was exactly what Brenda wanted, proof that I was unreasonable and destructive. I called the local sheriff's office instead. The dispatcher, a woman named Julie, listened to my situation. "Sir, this sounds like a civil matter. You will need to contact an attorney." "I am going to freeze to death out here," I said, watching my breath create clouds in the air. "This is criminal trespassing or breaking and entering or something." "Do you have proof of ownership?" "Yes, but it is inside the cabin." "Is there anyone who can verify you own the property?" I gave her Marcus Chen's number, but it was nearly midnight. He would not answer. Julie suggested I find a hotel for the night and sort it out in the morning. The nearest hotel was 30 miles away in Breckenridge proper. I got back in my truck and started driving. 5 miles down the mountain, my truck coughed, sputtered, and died. The grinding noise I had been ignoring had finally caught up with me. I coasted to the side of the road and tried to restart it. Nothing. My phone showed 2 bars and 18% battery. I called a towing company. They said it would be 3 hours before they could reach me, maybe more with the storm coming in. I told them my truck was not my primary concern. "I need a ride to town. I will pay extra." "Sorry, sir, we just do towing." I hung up and called for an Uber. No drivers available in my area. I tried Lyft. Same result. The temperature was now -12. I had a winter coat, gloves, and a hat, but I was not equipped for an extended stay in these conditions. My truck was losing heat fast with the engine dead. I could walk, but 5 miles in this cold would be dangerous, possibly fatal. I called Marcus Chen. Voicemail. I left a message explaining everything, my voice shaking from cold and anger. Then I called Brenda Morrison again. This time she answered. "You have any idea what time it is?" She demanded. "You locked me out of my cabin. I am stranded on the side of the road. My truck broke down. It is -12 degrees. That sounds like a personal problem, Mr. Andrews. Perhaps if you had paid your fines and complied with community standards, we would not have been forced to take action. You cannot just change someone's locks. That is illegal." Actually, according to Colorado HOA law, when a property owner fails to pay assessed fines and is in violation of community covenants, the association has the right to take possession of the property until such time as the owner complies with all requirements and pays all outstanding debts. "I own that cabin. You are going to get sued into oblivion." "I would love to see you try. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Andrews." She hung up. I sat in the truck, watching the temperature gauge drop. 20% battery now. I needed to conserve power. I turned off the phone and wrapped my coat tighter. The next hour was the longest of my life. I did jumping jacks in place to stay warm. I rubbed my hands together. I could feel the cold working its way through my layers, into my bones. My toes were going numb despite my boots. This was how people died in the mountains. Slowly, alone, while other people slept in warm beds. At 1:30 a.m., headlights appeared through the falling snow. A sheriff's patrol vehicle pulled up behind my truck. A deputy got out, a young guy with a round face and concerned eyes. "You Sebastian Andrews?" "Yes." "I am Deputy Kevin Walsh. Dispatch said you were having a property dispute." I explained everything while he listened, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he sighed. "This is complicated, sir. On one hand, if you own the property, they have no right to lock you out. On the other hand, if there is a legal HOA lien and they followed proper procedure, they might have grounds for what they did. I am freezing to death while we figure out the legality. I understand. Let me make some calls. He got back in his patrol car. I could see him talking on his radio, then on his phone. 15 minutes passed. My phone was down to 10%. I turned it on long enough to check the temperature. -15. Deputy Walsh got out again. Okay, here is what I can do. I cannot force them to let you back in your cabin tonight because this is a civil property matter. But I can give you a ride to town and make sure you get somewhere safe. Tomorrow morning, you need to contact an attorney and get this sorted out properly. Can you at least cite them for something? Reckless endangerment, not without more evidence that they intended to cause you harm. Right now, they will just say they changed the locks as part of a legal process and had no way of knowing you would show up tonight. He drove me to a Holiday Inn in Breckenridge. I paid for a room with my credit card, took the hottest shower of my life, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep did not come. I kept thinking about Brenda Morrison's voice, so casual and dismissive, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. At 6 a.m., I called Marcus Chen. Sebastian, I got your message. Are you okay? I told him about the night before. He listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing. This is bad, he said finally. This is really bad. They crossed a line. Changing the locks without notice, especially during a winter storm warning that is going beyond standard HOA enforcement. We can work with this. I want them destroyed. I understand your anger, but let us focus on getting you back in your cabin first. Then we will talk about consequences. What do I need to do? First, file a police report about being locked out. Get it on record. Then meet me at my office at 9. I am going to draft an emergency motion for the court. We will get a judge to issue an order compelling them to give you access to your property. How long will that take? If we are lucky, we can get a hearing this afternoon. But Sebastian, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this drags out. HOAs have lawyers too, often very aggressive ones. I met Marcus at his office in Denver at 9 sharp. He looked how I felt, tired and angry. We spent 2 hours going through every document related to my cabin, the HOA, and their violation notices. Marcus had me write out a detailed statement of everything that happened the night before. The key issue here is whether they followed proper legal procedure, Marcus explained. Colorado law does allow HOAs to place liens on properties for unpaid fines. In extreme cases, they can even foreclose. But there are specific steps they have to follow, including giving you adequate notice and opportunity to respond. Looking at your paperwork, I see some violation notices but nothing about changing locks or taking possession of your property. So they messed up, potentially. We will argue that they violated due process and endangered your life by locking you out during dangerous weather conditions. That second part is crucial. It is not just about property rights anymore. It is about basic human safety. At noon, Marcus filed our emergency motion with the Summit County District Court. We requested an immediate hearing based on the emergency nature of the situation. The clerk said a judge would review it by end of business. Now we wait, Marcus said. I could not just wait. I drove back to Breckenridge and went to my cabin. The locks were still changed. I took photos of everything, documenting the new locks, the weather conditions, the posted no trespassing signs that had not been there before. A woman emerged from the luxury home next door. She was maybe 50 with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive ski wear. "Can I help you?" she called out. "I am trying to get into my cabin." "Oh, you are Mr. Andrews. Brenda said you might come around. You know you are trespassing, right? I own this property." Not according to the lien. The association took possession last week. You should really talk to Brenda about getting your things. Last week. I was here 2 weeks ago and everything was fine. Well, things change. This is a nice community and we all follow the rules. Maybe you should consider selling to someone who appreciates what we are building here. She went back inside before I could respond. I called Marcus and told him about the conversation. Did she say they took possession last week? Yes. And you were never notified? Never. The last letter I got was 3 weeks ago, another violation notice about my truck. This keeps getting better. They are in serious violation of due process. Let me add that to our motion. At 4 p.m. I got a call from Marcus. A judge had agreed to hear our emergency motion at 8 a.m. the following morning. The HOA had been notified and ordered to appear. I felt a surge of hope. That night, I stayed at the Holiday Inn again. I could not afford many more nights here, but I had no choice. I tried to work remotely, logging into my company laptop and responding to emails, but my mind kept drifting back to Brenda Morrison and her satisfied tone on the phone. The next morning, I met Marcus at the Summit County Courthouse. It was a modern building with large windows and high ceilings. We went through security and found the courtroom assigned to our hearing. Brenda Morrison was already there with a tall man in an expensive suit. She looked exactly as I had imagined. Blonde, thin, wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than my truck. She glanced at me with barely concealed contempt. Her lawyer introduced himself as Donald Kepler from a Denver firm that specialized in HOA law. He looked bored, like this was routine for him. Judge Margaret Reeves entered, and we all stood. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation, Marcus had told me, for not tolerating games in her courtroom. "This is an emergency motion for access to property," Judge Reeves said, reading from her notes. "Mr. Chen, make your case." Marcus stood and laid out the situation clearly and concisely. I had been locked out of my property without notice during dangerous weather. I had nearly frozen on the side of the road. The HOA had failed to follow proper legal procedures for taking possession of the property. He submitted my written statement and photos as evidence. Judge Reeves turned to Kepler. "Counselor, Your Honor, the Pine Ridge Community Association followed all required procedures under Colorado HOA law. Mr. Andrews has been in violation of community covenants for over 6 months. He owes $17,000 in fines. Multiple notices were sent to his address of record, both by regular mail and certified mail. When he failed to respond or comply, the association placed a lien on the property. After additional attempts to contact Mr. Andrews and negotiate a resolution, the association exercised its legal right to take temporary possession of the property to prevent further deterioration and protect community property values. "When was Mr. Andrews notified that you would be changing the locks?" Judge Reeves asked. "A notice was mailed to his Denver address 2 weeks ago. Did he receive it? We have proof of mailing. We cannot control whether he checks his mail." Marcus jumped in. "Your Honor, I have reviewed all correspondence my client received. There was no notice about lock changes or taking possession. The last document was a violation notice dated 3 weeks ago about his vehicle." "You have this notice of lock change?" Judge Reeves asked Kepler. He shuffled through papers. "It should be here. Give me a moment." "I am not inclined to give you a moment, Counselor. Either you have it or you do not. We may have sent it by regular mail rather than certified, so you have no proof Mr. Andrews received notice." "We followed standard procedures, Your Honor." Judge Reeves leaned back in her chair. "Let me make sure I understand. You changed the locks on Mr. Andrews' property during a winter storm warning without confirmed notice, and he was forced to spend the night in sub-zero temperatures. Does that sum it up? Mr. Andrews had ample opportunity to comply with association rules, Kepler said. His predicament was the result of his own choices. His predicament could have been fatal, Judge Reeves said sharply. I do not care how many violation notices you sent. You do not lock someone out of their home in January in Colorado without making absolutely certain they know it is happening. This is not about property values. This is about basic human decency and following the law. Brenda Morrison whispered something to Kepler. He nodded and stood again. Your Honor, if I may address Mrs. Morrison's concern, the association is willing to allow Mr. Andrews temporary access to retrieve his belongings while this matter is resolved through proper channels. How generous, Judge Reeves said dryly. Here is my order. Pine Ridge Community Association will immediately provide Mr. Andrews with keys to access his property. He will have full, unrestricted access as of this moment. The association's lien remains in place, but they may not deny Mr. Andrews' use of his property. If there are further disputes about fines or violations, they will be resolved through the proper civil process, not by locking people out of their homes. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, Kepler said, though his expression suggested otherwise. Mr. Chen, I suggest your client file a formal complaint with the state about the HOA's procedures. This kind of behavior needs to be on record. We will do that, Your Honor. Thank you. As we left the courtroom, Brenda Morrison stepped in front of me. This is not over, she said quietly. You still owe $17,000. You still have violations. All you did was waste everyone's time and money. Your lawyer just made you look like a fool in front of a judge, I replied. I would be more worried about your own problems. Her face flushed red. You do not belong in Pine Ridge. Everyone knows it. Why do you not just sell and go somewhere you fit in? Because it is my property and I do not take orders from you. Marcus pulled me away before I could say anything else. Outside the courthouse, he grinned. That went better than expected. Judge Reeves does not like HOA overreach, and you gave her a clear case of it. They will have to give you keys today. What about the fines and violations? We will fight those separately. But Sebastian, you need to be realistic. Some of those fines might be legitimate under Colorado HOA law. We will negotiate them down, but you will probably have to pay something. I hate this. I know. But you won. You got access to your cabin back. That is the important thing. We drove to a coffee shop to wait for Kepler to contact us with the new keys. An hour later, Marcus's phone rang. Kepler said we could pick up keys at Brenda Morrison's house. Absolutely not, Marcus said. Have them delivered to my office in Denver, or we go back to Judge Reeves and explain why your client is not complying with her order. 2 hours later, a courier delivered an envelope to Marcus's office. Inside were 2 new keys and a note that said, "These keys are temporary. Final resolution pending." I drove back to my cabin that evening. The temperature had climbed to a balmy 15 degrees. I unlocked the door with my new keys and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I had left it 2 weeks ago, except for one thing. The fireplace had been cleaned and inspected, and a notice had been left on the mantel explaining that the association had conducted a safety inspection and found the chimney to be a fire hazard in need of immediate repair. I called Marcus. They went inside my cabin while I was locked out. They had no right to do that. That is another violation. Document everything. Take photos of the inspection notice. Do not touch anything they left. I spent the night in my cabin, but I could not relax. Every sound made me jump. I kept expecting Brenda Morrison or one of her cronies to show up and demand I leave. I barely slept. The next morning, I went through every room carefully. Nothing appeared to be stolen or damaged beyond the inspection paperwork. They had been careful, which somehow made it worse. This was calculated, not chaotic. Marcus called at 9. I have been doing research. The inspection they conducted was likely legal if your HOA covenants allow for safety inspections, but they should have given you notice first. We can add it to our list of grievances. How long is that list now? Long enough to make them nervous. I got a call from Kepler this morning. They want to negotiate. What are they offering? They will reduce your fines to $5,000 if you agree to make specific improvements to your cabin within 6 months. New siding, paved driveway, updated landscaping. They estimate those improvements will cost around $60,000. That is insane. I do not have that kind of money. I told them that. They said you could finance it or sell the property. They just want me gone. Obviously. Look, I think we have enough to file a serious lawsuit against them. Wrongful lockout, endangerment, violation of due process, illegal entry. We could ask for damages. What are our chances? Decent, but not guaranteed. Juries can be unpredictable with HOA cases. Some people hate HOAs and will side with homeowners automatically. Others think HOAs are necessary and will side with them. It depends on who we get. What do you think I should do? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think you should consider selling. I know you love that cabin, but is it worth spending the next 2 years in court? Is it worth the stress and the legal fees? Sometimes walking away is the smart choice. I hung up and walked outside. The view from my cabin was spectacular. Snow-covered peaks, endless forest, complete silence except for the wind. This was my place, my sanctuary, and Brenda Morrison wanted to take it from me because it did not fit her aesthetic vision. No, I was not walking away. I called Marcus back. File the lawsuit, all of it. I want damages for emotional distress, endangerment, lost wages from missing work, everything we can think of. Are you sure? Completely. Okay, I will start drafting. This is going to get ugly. He had no idea how right he was. 2 weeks later, Marcus filed our lawsuit in Summit County District Court. We sued the Pine Ridge Community Association, Brenda Morrison personally, and the 3 other board members for a total of $300,000 in damages. The local newspaper picked up the story. Cabin owner sues HOA after being locked out in Subzero weather, ran on the front page of the Summit Daily News. My phone exploded with calls. Some were from neighbors I had never met, offering support. Others were from angry Pine Ridge residents accusing me of being a troublemaker. One woman called me a leech trying to profit off honest people. Another said I was destroying property values for everyone. The worst call came from my mother. Sebastian, I saw the news. Why are you doing this? They locked me out during a winter storm, Mom. I could have died. But suing them. That seems extreme. Can you not just work something out? They do not want to work things out. They want me gone. Maybe selling would not be so bad. You could find another cabin somewhere else. I scattered Dad's ashes there. She was silent for a long moment. Your father would not want you destroying your life over a building. I am not destroying my life. I am standing up for myself. It is the same thing sometimes, sweetheart. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and wondered if she was right. Was I being stubborn? Was this worth the fight? Then I remembered Brenda Morrison's face in the courthouse, her smug certainty that she was right and I was wrong. That I did not belong in her community. It was worth the fight. The next few months were a blur of depositions, document requests, and legal maneuvering. Kepler tried every trick to get our case dismissed. He argued we had not exhausted administrative remedies within the HOA. He argued I had no standing because I had not paid my fines. He argued our damage estimates were inflated and unrealistic. Judge Reeves denied every motion. Discovery was particularly enlightening. Marcus subpoenaed all the HOA's records, including emails and meeting minutes. What we found was damning. In an email dated 6 weeks before they changed my locks, Brenda Morrison wrote to the other board members. Sebastian Andrews refuses to comply with even basic standards. I propose we take aggressive action to force his hand. If we make things uncomfortable enough, he will sell, and we can buy his property at a discount and flip it to someone appropriate. Another board member, a man named Harold Jensen, replied, "Are you sure that's legal? Seems risky." Brenda's response, "I spoke with Donald. He says as long as we follow procedures on paper, we have plausible deniability. Andrews is not sophisticated enough to challenge us effectively." Marcus showed me these emails with barely contained glee. This is it. This is proof they acted in bad faith. They were not trying to enforce legitimate rules. They were trying to force you out so they could profit. Can we use this in court? Absolutely. This changes everything. We amended our lawsuit to include fraud and conspiracy. Our damages request jumped to $500,000. Kepler called Marcus the next day and asked for a settlement conference. We met at a conference room in a neutral law office in Denver. Brenda Morrison sat at one end of the table with her 3 board members and Kepler. I sat at the other end with Marcus. Nobody shook hands. "Let us be clear about something," Kepler began. "Those emails are taken out of context. My clients were simply discussing legitimate HOA business." "Your clients discussed forcing my client out so they could buy his property cheap," Marcus said. "That is fraud. That is speculation about theoretical scenarios. It is a written admission of intent to harm." Brenda Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Andrews, why do you not just tell us what it will take for this to go away? I want my fines eliminated. I want a written apology. I want you to amend the HOA covenants to exclude my property, and I want you to resign from the board." She laughed. "That is absurd. Then we will see you in court. You cannot win this. Even if a jury sides with you, which they will not, you will never collect anything close to $500,000. The HOA does not have that kind of money. Then you will have to assess your members to pay the judgment. I am sure they will love that. I am sure they will love reading those emails where you admit you were trying to profit off my property." Harold Jensen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Maybe we should consider his terms. This has gotten out of hand." "Quiet, Harold," Brenda snapped. "No, I will not be quiet. We followed you into this mess, and now we are looking at a massive lawsuit. I have already spent $15,000 on legal fees. My wife is furious. If you cannot handle board responsibility, resign." "Maybe I will. Maybe we all should." The other 2 board members nodded. I could see the coalition crumbling in real time. Kepler tried to regain control. "Let us table the personal issues and focus on resolution. Mr. Andrews, the association is willing to eliminate your fines and exclude your property from future assessments if you agree to drop the lawsuit and sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. What about the apology and Brenda's resignation, Mrs. Morrison's tenure on the board is not relevant to this dispute." I looked at Marcus. He shrugged slightly, leaving it to me. The truth was, I was tired. 4 months of legal battle had drained me financially and emotionally. My boss had been understanding, but the stress was affecting my work. I had lost 12 pounds. I was not sleeping well even when I was at the cabin, but I thought about that night on the side of the road, watching my breath freeze in the air, wondering if I was going to die because Brenda Morrison thought my cabin was ugly. "No deal," I said. "I want the apology and the resignation. Otherwise, we go to trial." Brenda Morrison stood up. "Fine, we will go to trial, and when we win, I will personally make sure you regret every decision you have made." She walked out. The other board members followed, looking miserable. Kepler gathered his papers. "You are making a mistake," he told Marcus. "We would have paid you to go away. Now you will spend another year fighting over scraps." After they left, Marcus turned to me. "You know you just walked away from a decent settlement, right?" "I know." "We might not get a better offer." "I do not care. She was willing to let me freeze to death. She does not get to walk away with just money." "Okay, then we go to trial." Jury selection was scheduled for late April. In the weeks leading up to it, I tried to focus on normal life. I went to work. I visited my mother, who had her surgery and was recovering well. I spent weekends at my cabin, enjoying the peace before the storm. The Pine Ridge Community Association was falling apart. 2 board members resigned in March, citing personal reasons. Harold Jensen sent me a private letter apologizing for his role in the lockout. He said he had trusted Brenda's judgment and realized too late she was acting out of personal spite rather than community interest. Brenda Morrison remained defiant. She gave an interview to the Summit Daily News claiming I was a bully trying to destroy a community organization. She started a GoFundMe to pay for legal expenses, which raised about $3,000 before being shut down for violating the platform's terms of service. The trial began on April 28th. Judge Reeves presided. We spent 2 days selecting a jury, 7 women, 5 men, ranging from a retired teacher to a construction worker to a software engineer. Marcus said it was a good mix. Opening statements were straightforward. Marcus painted me as an ordinary person who bought a cabin, only to be targeted by an aggressive HOA that tried to force him out for profit. Kepler painted me as a scofflaw who refused to follow basic community rules and then played victim when consequences arrived. The trial lasted 5 days. Marcus called me as the first witness. I walked through everything: buying the cabin, the first violation notice, the escalating fines, the night I was locked out. I described standing on the side of the road, my truck dead, the temperature dropping, believing I might actually die. "What went through your mind?" Marcus asked. I kept thinking about how stupid it was, that I was going to freeze to death because Brenda Morrison did not like how my cabin looked. Kepler cross-examined me aggressively. He brought up every violation notice, every fine I had ignored. "You received 17 notices over 6 months, correct?" "Yes." "And you ignored all of them." I disputed their authority to fine me. "But you never paid the fines." "No." "You never attended a board meeting to discuss your concerns." "I was not invited." "The meetings are posted on the association website." "I did not know there was a website." "So you made no effort to engage with the association constructively." "They made no effort to treat me like a human being." Kepler tried to rattle me, but I stayed calm. Marcus had prepared me well. The most dramatic moment came when Marcus called Brenda Morrison to the stand. She wore a conservative blue suit and pearls, every inch the respectable community leader. Marcus let her talk about the association's goals and values, getting her comfortable. Then he pulled out the emails. "Mrs. Morrison, did you write this email on November 3rd? I propose we take aggressive action to force his hand. If we make things uncomfortable enough, he will sell, and we can buy his property at a discount and flip it to someone appropriate." Her face tightened. "That was taken out of context." "What context makes it acceptable to force someone out of their home for profit? We were discussing options for dealing with a difficult property owner." "By making things uncomfortable. What does that mean?" enforcing our rules, by changing his locks during a winter storm. We changed the locks as part of a legal process. Did you know Mr. Andrews was coming to his cabin that night? No. Did you check? It is not my responsibility to track his movements. Even though you knew a winter storm was coming and temperatures would be life-threatening. We followed legal procedures. Did those legal procedures include checking whether you were leaving someone to freeze? Kepler objected. Judge Reeves sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury had seen Brenda Morrison's cold indifference. Marcus also called the deputy who had picked me up that night, Kevin Walsh. He testified about finding me on the side of the road, clearly in distress from the cold. In your opinion, was Mr. Andrews in danger? Marcus asked. Absolutely. Another hour and he could have suffered serious frostbite or worse. Kepler tried to argue that I had other options, that I could have called a friend or found shelter elsewhere. But Deputy Walsh was firm. At that time of night, in those conditions, I had been in genuine peril. On the fifth day, both sides gave closing arguments. Marcus was passionate, painting a picture of an ordinary person standing up to institutional bullying. Kepler was clinical, focusing on rules and procedures and my failure to follow them. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they came back, the foreperson, a middle-aged woman who worked as a paralegal, read the verdict. In the matter of Andrews versus Pine Ridge Community Association, we find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. We award damages in the amount of $275,000. I felt my legs go weak. Marcus gripped my shoulder, grinning. Across the aisle, Brenda Morrison sat frozen, her face pale. Judge Reeves thanked the jury and dismissed them. Then she turned to the parties. Mrs. Morrison, I want to be very clear. This verdict reflects not just a legal failure but a moral one. You allowed personal animosity and financial ambition to override basic human decency. You are fortunate Mr. Andrews survived that night, because if he had not, you would be facing criminal charges instead of civil liability. I strongly suggest you reflect on your actions and their consequences. Brenda did not respond. She gathered her things and left without looking at me. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. I gave a brief statement about being grateful for justice and hoping this would prevent other HOAs from similar overreach. Marcus handled most of the questions. That night, I drove to my cabin. The snow had melted. Spring was coming to the mountains, bringing green shoots and flowing water. I sat on my porch with a whiskey, watching the sun set behind the peaks. My phone rang. It was Marcus. How does it feel to be $250,000 richer? Unreal. Do you think they will actually pay? They have to. The HOA has insurance that will cover most of it. And if they do not, we will garnish assessments from members. Either way, you will get your money. What happens to Brenda? She will probably be removed from the board. Some of the members are already calling for it. There might even be a vote to dissolve the entire HOA. Good. You did it, Sebastian. You stood up to them and won. After we hung up, I thought about what my mother had said months ago, that my father would not want me destroying my life over a building. But I had not destroyed my life. I had fought for something that mattered to me, and I had won. The collection process took 3 months. The HOA's insurance company tried to negotiate the amount down, but Marcus held firm. In late July, I received a check for $275,000, minus Marcus's fees and expenses. I ended up with about $190,000. I used some of it to make repairs on the cabin. Not the elaborate renovations the HOA had demanded, just necessary maintenance. New roof, updated electrical, fixed plumbing. I also bought a new truck, a reliable Toyota that did not make grinding noises. The Pine Ridge Community Association limped along for a few more months before dissolving entirely. The members voted it out in September, tired of the legal fees and negative publicity. Brenda Morrison moved to Arizona shortly after. The luxury homes were still there, but without the HOA, there was no one to enforce aesthetic standards. Some owners maintained their properties immaculately. Others let things slide. The neighborhood became more normal, more human. Harold Jensen stopped by my cabin one afternoon in October. He brought a 6-pack of local beer as a peace offering. "I wanted to apologize again," he said. "I should have stood up to Brenda earlier. You eventually did. That counts." I learned a hard lesson about groupthink and trusting the wrong people. Cost me about $20,000 in legal fees and a lot of sleepless nights. "At least you were not locked out in negative 18 degrees. He winced. "I still cannot believe we did that. Or that Brenda did that, I should say. The rest of us went along with it, but it was her idea. Why did she hate me so much? Honestly, I think she saw you as a threat to her vision. She wanted Pine Ridge to be this exclusive, perfect place. Your cabin represented everything she was trying to eliminate. Old, modest, not fitting the aesthetic. It became an obsession. That is sad. It is. But it is also human nature. People get wrapped up in their own narratives and lose sight of reality." We drank beer and watched the aspens turn gold in the fading light. It was nice having a normal conversation with a neighbor, even one who had been my adversary. As fall turned to winter, I settled into a new routine. Work was stable. My mother was healthy. The cabin was in good repair. I started writing again, working on a new novel about a man who inherits a property with bizarre restrictions. It was fiction, but inspired by truth. One evening in December, almost a year after the lockout, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Andrews." The voice was familiar but strained. "Yes, this is Brenda Morrison." I almost hung up. "What do you want?" "I wanted to tell you I am sorry." Silence. I genuinely did not know how to respond. "I have been in therapy," she continued, "working through some things. My therapist suggested I make amends to people I hurt. You are at the top of that list. You think a phone call fixes what you did? No, nothing fixes it, but I need to say it anyway. I was wrong. I let my ego and my need for control turn me into someone cruel. I convinced myself I was protecting the community, but really I was just protecting my own pride. What I did to you that night was unforgivable. You are right, it was. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did and why it was wrong. And I am sorry." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, feeling strange. Part of me wanted to stay angry. Anger had fueled me through months of legal battle. But another part of me recognized the courage it took to make that call. Brenda Morrison had lost her position, her reputation, and a significant amount of money. She had been forced to confront her own actions and their consequences. Maybe that was enough. I never called her back. But I also did not think about her with the same rage anymore. She became just another person who made mistakes and had to live with them. By the time the anniversary of the lockout arrived, I was in a good place. The cabin was cozy and warm. Snow was falling outside, but I was safe inside with a fire burning and a glass of wine in hand. I thought about that night on the side of the road, how close I had come to a very different ending. The lawsuit had cost me time, stress, and money, even though I ultimately won. But it also gave me something valuable, proof that standing up for yourself matters. That you do not have to accept being pushed around, even when the pushers have authority and resources. I learned that HOAs can be vehicles for bullying, but they are not invincible. That the legal system, for all its flaws, can still deliver justice when you fight for it. That communities should be built on mutual respect, not enforced conformity. Most importantly, I learned that my cabin was more than just a building. It was a symbol of independence and persistence, a reminder that you can love something imperfect and fight to protect it. Spring came again to the mountains. I spent long weekends at the cabin, hiking and riding and enjoying the solitude. Neighbors would wave when they saw me. Some even stopped to chat. Without the HOA creating division, the community became more genuine. One warm day in May, I was working on my deck when a car pulled up. A young couple got out, looking at the neighboring property that had been up for sale. "Excuse me," the woman called. "Do you live here?" "Part-time," I said. "What is it like?" "We are thinking of buying that house." "It is beautiful, quiet, good people." "What about the HOA? The listing mentions there used to be one." "There is not one anymore, it dissolved." "Why?" I smiled. "Long story, but the short version is that HOAs work best when they serve the community, not control it. This area learned that the hard way. They bought the house 2 weeks later. I brought over a bottle of wine to welcome them. They were teachers from Denver, looking for a mountain retreat just like I had been years ago. We became friends. Life moved forward. The settlement money I received sat mostly in investments, earning interest. I did not need much beyond what I already had. Marcus suggested I write a book about the experience, said it could help other people facing similar situations. I told him I would think about it. Maybe I would. Maybe this story needed to be told so others would know they were not alone in fighting these battles. But for now, I was content to sit on my deck, watch the seasons change, and enjoy the peace I had fought so hard to protect. The cabin stood solid and warm, a testament to persistence and the belief that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Brenda Morrison never contacted me again. I heard through Harold Jensen that she was doing better, working at a real estate office in Scottsdale and staying away from community politics. Good for her. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow from their mistakes. As for the Pine Ridge development, it continued without the heavy hand of an HOA. Some properties were immaculate, others more casual. My cabin remained exactly as it was, a bit weathered, a bit modest, but mine. Nobody could tell me how to live or what improvements to make. Nobody could lock me out in the cold because they did not like my truck. That was freedom. That was worth everything on quiet nights when the wind moved through the pines and the stars filled the sky. I would sometimes think about that night on the side of the road. How close I had come to giving up, to letting the cold and the injustice win. But I had not given up. I had fought back with everything I had. And in the end, I had won not just a legal victory, but something more profound. The knowledge that I could stand up to institutional power and prevail. That one person with determination and the right help could hold bullies accountable. The cabin was my sanctuary again. No liens, no threats, no angry letters about violations. Just peace, solitude, and the knowledge that I had earned every moment of it. Sometimes justice takes time. Sometimes it requires sacrifice and struggle. But when it finally arrives, it tastes sweeter than anything else. It feels like coming home after a long, cold journey to find the fire burning and the door unlocked. That is what I learned from my battle with the Pine Ridge Community Association. That is what I carried forward into the rest of my life. And that is what I would tell anyone facing similar battles. Stand your ground, fight for what matters, and never let anyone make you feel small for defending your rights. Because in the end, your home is not just a building. It is your dignity, your independence, your sanctuary from the world. And nobody has the right to take that away from you, no matter how many rules they hide behind or how much authority they claim. I kept the new keys Brenda Morrison's lawyer had sent me, stored in a drawer as a reminder. Sometimes I would take them out and remember. Remember being locked out. Remember the cold. Remember the fear and anger and determination. Then I would put them back and go sit by my fireplace, grateful for warmth and safety and the simple right to be in my own home. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything.